I want to get to know you a little bit. I want you to get to know me a little bit. I think the kingdom has to operate in relationship.
Amen.
And so a little bit about myself. And actually what I'm going to do tonight, I promise you, you're going to leave full for 3 nights.
Amen.
I say that in the grace of God, but I just know that I've come with words that are going to encourage you. Tonight's going to be a night to stir your faith. The next 2 nights, tomorrow night and then the next morning, are going to be days of revelation.
Amen.
And at the end of it, there's going to be a footprint of God in your soul.
Amen.
And I believe a footprint of the Holy Spirit in the UK.
Amen. Amen.
And so,
we receive that.
some of that tonight is just going to be me telling my story. Because we all have a story. And this is something that I've learned from Lou. There's a line by an author named Calvin Miller years ago. He said, "Come to the courts of the Lord with your eyes unwashed by dreams, and you will see nothing." Let me say that again. Come to the courts of the Lord with your eyes unwashed by dreams, and you will see nothing.
My God.
See, there's a dream. Lou likes to say this. It's such a beautiful poetic line. God had a dream, and He wrapped your body around it.
Wow.
So it's actually the delight and the pleasure of God to talk to us in the language, the literal language of dreams. Not just that, I dream one day of having my own business, or I dream one day of being married. Those are waking dreams. Those are beautiful dreams. Those are true aspect of a dreaming heart. But God has the mysterious, symbolic language of dreams in the night. And He has His own dream throughout history. He's the master storyteller. Psalm 139 says, there's a book written about us, right? Psalm 40 says the same thing. Behold, I delight to do... lo, in your book it is written of me, I delight to do your will, O God. That's Psalm 40. Psalm 39 is all about David confessing the magnificent sovereignty of God. In verse 16 he says, "Thine eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in thy book they were all written, the days that were ordained for me, while as yet there was not one of them." So you have a divine author. Your life is a divine story. And before you were a gleam in your heavenly Father's eye, much less your earthly father, He had told a story of your life down to the finest degrees of detail. It's granular detail. The sovereignty of God in your life is not broad strokes, let's hope this happens. It's, I know your unformed substance in the womb and before the womb. And He's the author and perfecter of our faith, and He is a perfect author. I believe one of the enemy's most profound and successful strategies is to align us against our own story.
My God.
We become convinced, whether by despair, depression, resentment, the unsuccessful dealings of a hard life,
Come on.
the moments that enter and puncture through. We're starting to balloon with a little bit of hope. We've come through some hard things. We think it's finally turning around, and something happens. And we deflate, and we take that as our lot in life. And we no longer begin to accept the pronouncements of God over us. I think one of the most anointed lines, one of the most anointed lyrics in the last 10 years is, "I don't have time to maintain these regrets
Come on.
when I think about the way He loves me." See, the enemy would like to align our regrets against our purpose and destiny so that we no longer even aspire to believe in it. And we drift into apathy and passivity, and we hold it against God that the book that He has written that is full for us is not on the chapter that we want it to be, and that chapter has a way of getting longer as a result. The chapter we're wanting to move through to get to the next one are sometimes accelerated in the story of God when we come back to a place of faith. But make no mistake, the story is there and it's waiting on you. I'm going to talk tomorrow about agreement. I want to just use this as a quick illustration. What's your name, brother?
Steve.
Steve.
Legend.
Steve Legend, that's a good name. Man, that's weighty. That's a story waiting to be told right there. So, there was a moment up here, right when he laid his hands on the keys, at the very beginning, Reverend Betty was talking, he laid his hands on the keys, and instantly the presence of the Lord filled the room.
Yeah.
Did you feel it?
Yes, we did.
Instantly the presence of the Lord. Now there's multiple degrees of this dynamic that I'm talking about. Just a little bit. I'm going to talk about it more tomorrow in detail. In fact, I'm going to share a message I've never shared tomorrow. So there's your teaser. Come back.
Amen.
But agreement is a high principle in the kingdom.
My God.
And as soon as he laid his hands on the keys, he wasn't singing. It wasn't actually a melody. It was just a few hands on the keys. I felt the Spirit of the Lord come in. And I'm not normally a feeler in that way, but it was that strong. I felt it. And I felt like the Lord said, this is a man who knows how to agree with me.
Yeah.
And so that agreement creates a closing of a circuit.
Come on.
Right? So that energy transfers from one point to another when we agree. He did it. He just laid his hands on the keys and there was agreement and the Lord was with us.
Yes.
Now, I want to use this as an illustration also. Forgive me for this. There was a point where we were going.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We were going on, what was it?
Agnes Day.
Yeah, Agnes Day. That's right. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
You can see I'm not a singer. Don't agree with me. But it was powerful.
Yeah.
And you could tell the Lord was here and we were in agreement. But Brother Legend had the next song to get to.
No, Legend.
And so it's not, I mean, these things are challenging. But he was ready to move on, probably in honor to me as a speaker. He felt like he needed to get through things. But the agreement power was on where we were.
Yeah.
And when we're in a moment of agreement with heaven, forget the agenda.
Yeah.
We stay in that place and we agree. And not only are we moving in corporate agreement, but that corporate agreement is aligned with heaven. So it's layers of agreement on agreement. And that's how the kingdom breaks in.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that more tomorrow. But tonight, I want to publicly agree with you about why I'm here.
Amen.
I want to tell you some of my story, and it's going to have to do with this building right across here, because I want to put a word of faith in you that you will carry in prayer together, that place is going to be filled.
Amen.
And so I just want to lay this out. You know, it's interesting. I've just recently done some ancestry research. Have you all heard of Ancestry.com? Yeah. So I just recently did a lot of that. And I've known that my family came from the United Kingdom over the years, but I didn't know to what degree all my family comes from the United Kingdom. I have family lines in Wales, Britain, Scotland, Ireland, Northern Ireland, just across the board. My family going back hundreds and hundreds of years. But I found also, I went back far enough, and there was a guy named Rollo the Viking. Now, Rollo the Viking is famous for producing the line of Norman kings.
My gosh.
So Rollo the Viking came. He was given a protectorate in Paris by the King of France. His son, I think it was William Longsword, I don't remember the other two, they were the first Norman kings. His grandson was William the Conqueror in 1066 that came across the Channel and established the entire Norman dynasty of kings in England. Now there's just something about knowing your story, right?
Yeah.
There's something about knowing your story, and with all humility, I walk into this room a little different knowing that.
That's right.
I walk into this room in the land of my forefathers, and I feel like in prayer and by birth, I have an inheritance here. I have a reason to be here, and that when I agree with that, there's a folk singer named Bruce Coburn out of Canada. He has this great line. He says, when you know, even for a moment, that it's your time, you can walk in the power of 1,000 generations.
That's right.
When you know, even for a moment, that it's your time, you can walk in the power of 1,000 generations. God is bringing forth sons and daughters in the earth that are connected through millennia to an eternal lineage of Christ in you, the hope of glory. He is manifesting sons and daughters in the earth who walk in the power of knowing that it's their time. In 1992, I had a dream. It was the single most profound dream of my life. It was a simple dream. I have told very few people this dream, but what Reverend Betty shared tonight, I'm just going to walk in it, right?
Yeah.
You know, Moses was falsely concerned about his place in God's call, and he rebuked God and said, "Who am I to go to Egypt?"
Yeah.
And he later wrote about himself that he was the most humble man that walked the face of the earth.
Yeah.
So in the first case, he did what appeared to be humble, and it was nothing but pride.
That's right. Come on.
And in the second case, he did what appeared to be proud, and it was nothing but humble.
Yeah.
So appearances don't always add up. Again, it's are you agreeing with the word of the Lord and walking in submission and humility with others?
Yeah. So good.
So in 1992, I had a dream, and it was troubling to me. In the dream, I was in a vast grassland, as far as the eye could see, full of ripe wheat. It was beautiful, just flat and beautiful in all directions. Couldn't see to the end of it in any direction. And I was just walking along. And then suddenly, I was down in this grotto, this rock grotto. It was a perfectly carved circle. And I knew up above, up these cliffs, 50, 60 feet up, was that grassland where I had been walking. But now I'm in this grotto, 5, 10 times the size of this room, just stunning, beautiful. It was one of those dreams where everything was just that much clearer, that much more vivid, that much more emotional. And nothing was said in the dream. But I was on this rock outcropping that was like an island in the middle of the lake. And coming up from these cliffs in the field above were 12 waterfalls that were just all around. Each was a little different height, width, some splashed, some didn't. But they were pouring from this harvest field up below, up above. They were pouring in these 12 waterfalls and filling this grotto with water. And I was on a rock formation in the middle, dry. But I was absolutely captivated and fascinated, as you can only be in a dream from God. And I don't know if it was days or moments. I was just slowly turning, and I would study one waterfall, and I was just so moved. And then I would turn and I would study another, and I would turn and study another. And again, this happened, I don't know how long. I might have been asleep for 14 years for all I know. And in the dream, I knew that I was waiting to step under a waterfall. And I understood that these were the 12 apostles.
My God.
I knew that the waterfalls represented the 12 apostles, and that I was simply waiting for my time to step under one of them. I woke up from this dream troubled because I'm not really a fan of the titles. I believe we have to know each other in the spirit, but I believe too often these titles become ways to know each other in the flesh.
That's so good.
And I'm much more interested in the adjective, being pastoral, being prophetic, being apostolic, than the title. And yet, Betty honored me tonight saying something that I don't think she has any reason to know is part of my story. And I want to tell this story in such a way that you get connected to your own story. Because if you start to walk, if one of you starts to walk in the power of 1,000 generations, and then 3 of you, and then 10 of you, and now there's unity between you in prayer.
Yeah.
What are the things that shift across a whole nation?
Yeah.
When you start to walk in the story for which God appointed your birth.
My God.
So, I kind of argued with God quietly about this word for many, many years. God, I don't want the stigma of this. I don't want to be that guy that puts, Apostle Dean Briggs on my business card or whatever it is. I don't want to do those things that are bringing the ministry under scandal and condemnation from others. I don't want to do that. I don't want to play that game. And so I just sat on it, and the Lord gave me another dream in 1998. And in this dream, I was in a group about like this. I was pastoring at the time. It was a church about this big. And we were not a wealthy church. It had been a chicken slaughterhouse in the 1930s. So the floor sloped so that they could drain the blood, right? It had been dressed up since then. It wasn't that bad, but it was not a pretty place. And this was our church, and it was a beautiful thing. But in the dream, everything was wrong. So the floor was sloped so bad, the pulpit wouldn't stand. It kept leaning over. I actually, as I was about to have to get up to preach, I had to go to the bathroom. Wow. That's what preachers kind of fear, is that at the last minute you got to go to the bathroom. And worse, that you leave your thing on, your microphone on.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes. Oh, Lord.
So I leave to hurry out to go to the bathroom, and I look at the clock, and the clock is 20 to 12. That's what the clock says, and that's how I recorded in my dream. It wasn't 11:40, it was 20 to 12.
My God.
And I go to the bathroom. This is where we're just going to become real close friends right here, okay? Because this was ugly potty time, all right? This was serious. This was like I might be damaging the plumbing in this city, right? Now just work with me. You Brits are proper and we Americans are kind of casual, so you become a little more casual, I'll become a little more proper, but there's no nice way to say this. All right? There was a lot of stuff happening back there that I came to understand over the course of my life, if I could speak bluntly, that will speak to you, because let's get real.
Yeah, speak.
I had a lot of crap to deal with.
Talk.
Come on, right?
Yeah.
I had a lot of crap to deal with.
Yeah.
And when I came back in, everything was going wrong. It wasn't over yet. It was actually the Lord showing me in a different way the crap I was going to have to deal with.
That's right.
And so it was internal stuff, but it was external stuff. The pulpit was tilting over. This was back in days of transparencies, not digital projectors. And it was right in the way of the people, and I couldn't see them. And the pulpit was loaded with books, and I couldn't find my Bible. And just everything was going wrong. And to make it worse, in the dream, there were people there that never came to church. There were college professors and family members and things that were, I would have wanted their approval.
Yeah, come on.
And it was not to be had. And in the middle of that, all of a sudden, everything comes into place. I open my Bible to Isaiah 54. I tell them in the dream, some of you have come from the old thing looking for the new thing. And Isaiah 54 is a word that we must understand. Isaiah 54, it's all about releasing the shout of praise in faith from the barren woman before she has any children.
Yeah.
Sing, O barren woman, shout for joy. Your children shall be more than the children of the married woman, and for your shame you will have double honor.
Yeah.
And the word to the barren woman is, expand your tent pegs now.
No. Yeah. Go.
Now the barren woman lives in the solitary feeling of her shame. She's trapped in her story. And her story at that moment is not pretty. It's not a good story. It's not a welcome story. It's the divorced woman. It's the addicted man. it's the you know, the jobless,
Yeah.
the poor, whatever it is, whatever your story is, you have or may be going through a period of barrenness.
Yeah.
And the word of the Lord, the power of grace and redemption is, it changes our story.
Come on.
And the partnership of the barren woman was, I want you to act like the word is true before it's true.
Hey.
So she was told, build a bigger tent than your married friend who has 8 kids. You're a single woman, you have no defender, and yet I want you to act like you're the queen of the realm, basically. And do it loudly. Don't do it quietly. Don't go slink off over here and build it so that nobody can see. You build it right where you are and you shout with praise the whole time. I got kids coming! Woo!
Hallelujah.
Right? That's what she was supposed to do. Abraham was Abram before he was Abraham. His name meant, Abraham meant father of multitudes. For 99 years, that was not true. But guess what God did? He tricked Abraham and everybody else into prophesying his future for him.
God.
He said, your name is no longer Abram, but Abraham. And for years, wherever Abraham went, 10 years before it became true, if he introduced himself, they didn't hear the proper name. It was actually an African kind of way of doing it, right?
Yeah.
What is your name?
Let me tell you something.
Well, I can't really explain why this is true. But I'm the father of multitudes. Wow, you know, I mean, and that's a culture of honor. The Arab sheiks and princes, show me your many sons.
Yeah.
There's this one, but he's actually illegitimate. It's through my concubine. But your name is the father of multitudes. Yeah, father of multitudes. How'd you get that name? God gave it to me.
Yeah, come on. Come on.
God gave it to me. And so now whenever he tells his name, others have to call him by that name.
Come on.
Father of multitudes, come over here. Father of multitudes, we want to do business with you. Father of multitudes. So now people all around the region are prophesying God's will to manifest. And Abram is reaching a point where he's saying, hang it all, I'm the father of multitudes. Right? Wherever he goes and whatever he does, he is proclaiming in his name God's story for him, and it happens. He has one son who is as good to him in the promise of God as dozens and dozens. And we are the stars in Abraham's sky and the sands on Abraham's seashore.
Thank you, Father.
So everything's going wrong, and I hit Isaiah 54, and in the dream I tell him, this is the word. If you've come from the old thing looking for the new thing, we have to know Isaiah 54. And in the back of the room, my sister stands up in the dream, and she says, Dean, none of the sons of God will have a problem with what has happened here today. That was the end of the dream. And I understood that trials and afflictions and setback and delay and all the things that go wrong are actually the furnace and the garden by which God refines and grows sons.
Come on. So good.
The things that you think are opposed to your destiny, if you will have a realignment of your perspective and come into agreement that even when you don't have many sons, you can still be the father of multitudes. Even when you are a barren widow, you are the mother of many.
Yeah.
And you begin to act in agreement with God's pronouncement of your story. Lo, in the book it is written of me.
Yeah.
This may not be my favorite page, but there's another page coming, and I'm going to live in the promise that He has good plans for me. He has purposed to do me good. And we have to know that that's our daddy. And the enemy comes along and he wants to steal that confidence and condemn God in our thoughts so that we will condemn our story before Him. You have punished me with my own life. Consider the curse that we often invoke through our attitude.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I took note of these dreams. I didn't know what they meant. I was early in my dream interpretation life, but I pondered. I wrote them down. Don't let me leave tonight without praying for an impartation of dreams.
Oh, don't worry about that.
Yes, please.
We will remind you.
So, I'm dreaming and I'm pondering, and let me encourage you, write your dreams down. I just had a dream last night. I woke up at 2 in the morning, and I was thinking, oh, I just want to sleep. But I thought, no, I know this is God because it had Betty in it.
That's my brother.
So I wrote it down, and one of the mysteries of stewarding your dreams is the things you don't think you can remember, if you will discipline yourself to write them down in the moment, details come back to you. That when you're just laying there trying to think about it, it all seems vague and fuzzy, but it's why you write the vision so that the reader may run. So I have collected 100, 150 dreams over the course of the last 20, 30 years of my life. I started dreaming when I was 5 years old. This is a prayer and prophetic school, right? Yeah, all right. And so I've collected these and I've practiced writing them down, and I have been amazed that the testimony of God, when I wrote it down, the reader to run with was me. The context of that passage is actually you're writing it down so that somebody else can run with it. But when it's your own dreaming life, you're the writer and the reader and the runner.
Come on.
And so when you do that, I have discovered that the glory is in the details. I have so many stories in God that would have been generally good and inspiring. But because I wrote it down and He added in the discipline, He faithfully added the details. So now I have particulars. And 20 years later, I've been in this cycle of 20 years looking back and seeing not general alignment, not general fulfillment, but specific, detailed things coming to pass. And it began in 2012. And so I want to talk very quickly about some of the things that came into alignment with Lou and I.